Welcome to our new course on team building in the company. Today is our first session of this course, and we will discuss why team building activities are necessary and how to conduct one type of team building, onboarding new employees, when a new team is formed, new employees join, and how we can help them. We will start with information about why this course is needed and why someone should take it. By applying the knowledge gained, you will act as an HR business partner and a partner for your teams, which is a highly sought-after competency. In other words, you help teams work better. This is what executives greatly expect from HR. This course has a website. This is what it looks like. It says building at the end. Let us introduce ourselves in case we have not met yet. My name is Mike Pritula, and I have worked for companies like Alpha Bank, Media, Wargaming, and ID, and now it is Force. These are different companies, different industries, different roles, and different challenges. I have been doing this for over 15 years now, and it will probably be 17 years soon. The work relies on global best practices. By the way, Deloitte is the company whose useful research we will be using today. Next, participants in this course will have homework assignments, with the first one starting today. Completing these assignments allows you to earn our diploma. You need to score at least a 4 or 5 on these assignments. But if you do not get a 4 or 5 right away, you will have the opportunity to redo the homework. And of course, you will receive feedback from me on each homework assignment. Our course program consists of 6 sessions. Today, as I mentioned, we will discuss why this is necessary. Then we will talk about how to improve teamwork through various types of team building activities, how to conduct team building activities between different teams, not just within one team, but between different teams, how to run team building events for remote employees and virtual teams, how to resolve conflicts and problems in a team through team building. And in the 6th session, we will discuss what else is needed, what other team processes are important. We will touch on them briefly today, but in the 6th session, we will break down the different processes that a team needs to be effective. That is the program we have for this course. Today, we'll talk about what team building is in general. We'll discuss how teams develop. This is important to understand because teams have different needs at different stages. We'll learn about the benefits for companies to engage in team building activities, especially when some of these activities cost money. We'll look at current research, and specifically, a study by Deloitte will be available to course participants in today's supplementary materials. We'll discuss how to conduct team building for new employee onboarding and look at 3 ready-made exercises for this purpose. So let's get started. First, team building. Team building is what I hear most often when it comes to teamwork. We need to have a team building event. Which team building activity would be best suited for this task? What kind of team building does my team need? The word team building is heard often, although the real question is often how to improve team performance. It's important to understand that team building is more of a tool. It's not some kind of function, it's a tool. Or you could even say events. You could also call it an event or activity. However, this event or activity has a purpose. The goal is to increase the level of collaboration in the company. This can be within a single team, or between teams, 2 teams, for example. It can be at the company-wide level. That's why the second name, which is more professional from an HR perspective, is collaboration in English. So this area of HR work is called collaboration, and it has a broad meaning. This includes the company, teams, or even 2 people who interact with each other. There's some form of collaboration between them. That being said, we're not going to avoid the topic of team building. We'll be discussing many different aspects of it. We'll be examining different scenarios, but we must understand that when we talk about team building, we're also talking about collaboration. Next, what is collaboration? It's communication and teamwork among employees based on each other's ideas to produce something new or do something differently. A collaboration-based organization unlocks the potential, abilities, and knowledge of each employee, thereby creating value, fostering innovation, and increasing productivity in the workplace. A bit later today, we'll see in percentages, numbers, and monetary terms how much this improves things, so it's not just empty words. Let's move on. What is considered collaboration? There are many elements. There's the company research I mentioned earlier. This comes from there. You can see the captions for each column at the bottom, and on the right side, the translation from left to right, top to bottom. It's an identical translation. So here we have the opinions of managers and employees. They don't differ much, so we don't need to focus on the differences. So collaboration implies teamwork. By the way, here's the second term I hear alongside team building, teamwork. How to improve teamwork, how to build teamwork, and so on. Indeed, teamwork is one of the main synonyms for collaboration and team building. But it's important to understand that collaboration and team building are broader concepts than just teamwork. It's an exchange of ideas. It's brainstorming sessions, creative innovation, formal team meetings. It's about being more productive. It's about sharing new information, communicating with colleagues, making phone calls, open plan offices, and teleconferences. Simultaneous document editing. This is also collaborative work, contributing online, for example, to a corporate social network or workplace platform. The use of social networks in general is also a form of collaboration. All these are elements of it. Next, what is team building in a company? So, if we break down the word team building, team means team, and building means construction. So team building literally means building a team, and team building can include any activities that help improve interaction and collaboration within a team or company. Now, regarding types, it's important to understand that team building doesn't necessarily mean, I don't know, going somewhere and doing an escape room. There can be different types of team building activities. That is, teamwork is built and created through various activities. But we'll be looking at them in this course with specific examples, starting from today's lesson. For example, even a weekly team meeting is already a form of team building. It's already team building. For many teams, this is the only opportunity to see each other and discuss common issues, to hear what everyone is working on, to hear from each person. For example, people don't always live or work in the same place. And when they come together, it's a real opportunity for them to work. Next, a joint dinner is also team building, but only if it's properly organized. So it's not just about eating food, but rather creating an environment where people can interact informally. An off-site strategic session is also team building. This includes brainstorming, idea exchange, discussions, voting, decision-making, company-wide corporate events, which are also team building, go-karting, quests, a very good option. Especially if it's a quest that can only be completed by interacting and working together. Rope training, well, probably one of the most popular. It's called rope training, actually a series of exercises, usually outdoors, usually physical in nature. Business games are something that can take place indoors. Off-site training with case studies. In short, there are many options available. So my task is to convey to you the idea that team building is not just about going to a restaurant or completing a ropes course. There can be many variations, and that's probably the advantage of team building. You always have a huge number of ways to approach any given task. And in this course, we'll be discussing different options each time. Today we'll cover 3. There will be more in some sessions, fewer in others. You'll get about 20 different options throughout this course. Probably even more than 20 actually, for a wide variety of real-life situations. Next, we need to understand that since team building concerns teams and the word team, we must understand the basics or fundamentals of team functioning. There are 2 important aspects in the basics of team functioning. The first is the stages of team development. The second is the processes that should be present in a team. We'll touch on the processes a bit today, but we'll examine them in more detail in the last session. What processes should be in place for a team to be fully functional? So let's start with the stages of team development. We'll familiarize ourselves with this part because this idea or theory directly affects how a team works. Let's start with what a team is. So there's a concept of a group, and this concept is not the same as a team. What is called a group? A number of people who interact with each other, are psychologically aware of each other, and perceive themselves as a group. So people who interact in some way form a group. Okay. What is a team? A group of people becomes a team when they understand and share common goals. This is an important point. People may not become a team if they don't have a common goal. You know, my favorite example is a sales department or a recruiting department. They can be a team or they can just be a group. If everyone has a common goal, for example, in the sales department, to sell $1 million worth per month, in the recruiting department, to fill X vacancies per month. For example, if this is a common goal, it's a team and they'll work together towards it. If the leader took the overall goal, perhaps without even telling their people, divided it into individual goals and said, your task is to fill 3 vacancies or 5 vacancies. If I were in sales, your task would be to sell $100,000 worth, and everyone only sees their own area, their own plan, then it will be a group, everyone will be working on their own goal, and they may not even need to interact. In recruiting, recruiters often don't have to interact, but they can share candidates, can help each other, or may choose not to help. So the difference between whether they will be a team or not depends on whether they have a common goal or not. That is, whether the leader communicated what the whole team is working towards together or not. Let's move on. So a team, a group of people who share responsibility for the results of the activities of the organization they're part of. This could be a division, a department, anything. That is, the name can be different. By organization, we mean a certain number of people. What else? The difference between a group and a team. So a group has no size limitations. A group can be any size. For example, a chat where I communicate with residents of a building, there are 500 of them. This is a group of residents of some residential complex. There could be thousands of them. A team is usually limited in size. Team members interact with each other. It's difficult for it to be somehow unlimited. A group has a common interest. For example, residents of a certain residential complex have a common interest in keeping the yard clean. A team has common goals. A group has a sense of belonging to something and awareness of being part of a whole. That is, Being a resident of the residential complex, I recognize and identify myself as a resident of this residential complex. A team has interaction between members to achieve both individual and group goals. A group can interact as much as it wants. I can be a resident of my residential complex and not participate in anything. Or I can actively participate, clean the street, make decisions. In a team, there's interdependence for achieving individual or group goals. That is, the team must interact with each other. In a group, there's no responsibility other than a sense of belonging, while a team shares responsibility for common results. A group has contractual accountability, meaning it reports only as much as it wants to. In a team, there's individual accountability. A group doesn't necessarily have work or goals, while in a team, members work together, either physically or virtually. These are the differences between a group and a team. Now let's move on. A team never stands still. Something is always happening there. Usually because something is happening there, you or the leaders feel the need to conduct team building. If nothing was happening there, perhaps the question of conducting team building wouldn't even arise. In other words, team building emerges as a need in response to some changes. What else? That's when changes begin. When a team is just forming, changes always start. So the team is formed and it starts going through changes. It's unstable. When an important event happens in the team, like a new member joining, it forces the team to go through some changes again. When an important employee leaves, it also forces the team to change. When external pressure increases, such as any external crises or difficulties, it forces the team to change. Or the psychological atmosphere in the organization changes. So any difficulties in the organization also force the team to change. These are the triggers that force a team to change. What changes does a team usually go through? There's an author, I would say, of a theory of team development from a psychological perspective. It's like this. Tuckman is probably one of the most well-known popular authors who describes team development dynamics. He asserts, and many agree with this, that any team goes through 4 stages of development before it disbands. These 4 stages progress from the least efficient to the most efficient. However, a team doesn't necessarily automatically move from one stage to another. Any team runs the risk of getting stuck at one of the stages. What are these stages that a team goes through? The first stage is forming, the second stage is storming, the third is norming, and the fourth is performing. You can also often hear it as forming, storming, norming, performing, like a little rhyme. And then there's a yearning for the breakup. So, at each of these stages, the team faces different questions, different needs, and different processes. I also call the first stage, I personally prefer it, the honeymoon phase. Why? Because everyone usually experiences very positive emotions and impressions at the beginning of something they're about to embark on. And there are many questions that the team asks itself. What's our goal? What's the structure? What are the roles? Who's the leader? How will we work together? So usually there are many questions they're seeking answers to. Answer next. As soon as the team starts working together, they go through the storming stage. I really liked it when I once came across a video from Steve Jobs. Anyone who wants can watch it on YouTube. Search for Steve Jobs and team. I will retell it in English, so I will just narrate it, not show it. Steve Jobs tells a story, whether true or not. He says, when I was a kid, I met a guy who used to walk around collecting stones. I asked, why are you collecting stones? And he showed me a device he had in his garage. This device was in the form of a coffee can, or just a tin can, which was connected to a small electric motor. This guy would put the sharp stones, this gravel that he found, into this can, and at night he would turn on the small electric motor. All night long the can would rattle madly, making noises. Imagine the stones constantly rattling in the can. But in the morning, in this can, instead of these sharp, angular stones in the form of gravel, there were smooth pebbles. The stones rubbed against each other all night, becoming smoother, and by morning they had turned into pebbles. He says Steve Jobs says it is the same with a team. When a group of people comes together, they are rough-edged, they have not adjusted to each other, they are like gravel. When they start working together, they make noise, a kind of rumble, as they clash with each other, their rough edges colliding. These rough edges gradually smooth out and the team becomes more cohesive. And then it becomes a well-functioning team. That is the analogy. Indeed, every team goes through a stormy phase. For many, this comes as a surprise or an unpleasant experience, but it is a natural process. In other words, team development cannot happen without it. We will talk more in detail about team problems, and in discussing these problems, we will address the points where a team might get stuck. We will get to that a bit later. Many conflicting issues arise here. Questions for each other, questions for the leader, about processes, about the organization, complaints and criticisms, and so on. The next stage is normalization. Everyone loves this stage because everything seems to be getting back to normal. The team usually develops an understanding of roles, processes, and goals here and starts to work properly. When a team has worked well together for a while, it becomes an effective unit, until some event occurs again that restarts the team dynamics. For example, until a new member joins and restarts the whole team dynamic from scratch. And since new employees often join, the team dynamics frequently restart. That's why these team building activities from HR are needed to help the team be more effective. So, at all 4 stages of team development, the team faces different tasks and goals, different roles, different operational processes, and different relationships with each other. Team building activities, broadly speaking, are aimed at improving interpersonal relationships. But we'll talk about the process in our last session. They help improve people's effective work and roles, among other things. That's how it works. At each stage of team development, different actions and behaviors are expected from the leader. For example, at the formation stage, maximum clarity is needed. That is, the leader should be as close to the team as possible, telling everyone what to do, how to do it, monitoring progress, and not letting go under any circumstances. As the team progresses, the leader transitions to a more supportive role, but continues to maintain some control and set goals. And in the final stages, the leader becomes more democratic, acting as one of the team members when they're on equal footing with others doing things together. So that's how it goes. That's the process. That's how it works. Next, the leader might face these issues at different stages. The first is insufficient leadership. That is, a leader may not pay enough attention to their team, especially in the early stages, and the team will get stuck at that stage. Conversely, in later stages, the leader may exhibit excessive control. It's also bad when there's too much control. Ideally, there should be a match between the stages of team development and the leader's approach. Now let's return to our dear and beloved team building activities. Why does a company need them from a business perspective? Because, when HR says, listen, let's do a team building activity, let's take them to an escape room, and we need $500 for this. Someone in the company might say, $500, why spend it? Let's buy a coffee maker instead. A coffee maker might not be a bad solution either, as it also affects teamwork, because people gather in the kitchen, meet, chat, and so on. But still, how do you convince management that it's necessary? Deloitte's research, there's a link to this study here for those who need it. They say that when employees collaborate, on average, they work 15% faster than when they don't show interest in cooperation. Work performance improves by 73%, there's 60% more innovation, and 56% more job satisfaction. Not bad in principle. But that's not all. Companies that have a collaboration strategy, that is, those that purposefully help improve team interaction, they are twice as likely to outperform their competitors and have a better chance of increasing their profits. In principle, these are good arguments for conducting team-building activities. What else? It's believed that collaboration comes with a certain price. In the original Deloitte study, they conduct research using Australia as an example. For example, knowing Australia's GDP and Ukraine's GDP, I can scale it to the economy of a country like Ukraine. For instance, in Ukraine, the price of collaboration is between $4 and $6 billion. Basically, it's a large sum worth fighting for. What do current studies say about team building? So the business benefits. There are 2 main points that can be easily quantified and which should be primarily relied upon. The first is time savings. That is, when people collaborate, they complete various tasks faster and reach agreements more quickly. Everything happens faster. The second is the quality of work. That is, employees who collaborate together produce better quality work. Another interesting study shows that women typically have a slightly higher percentage of collaboration than men, and the level of collaboration depends on age. For some reason, I don't know why, it first increases up to 44 years, then there's some decline, and then it increases again. These are the kinds of patterns we see. What improves collaboration? This study shows shared electronic resources, common workspaces such as open offices, meeting rooms, and kitchens. More meeting rooms, open office layouts, more programs where people can work together, the ability to conduct video conferences and use social media. These are the kinds of things that enhance collaboration. What can hinder collaboration? Lack of time, some kind of inappropriate culture, management structure. People resist using others' ideas. People are not interested in collaboration, management policies, and so on. All of these can be obstacles. Now about finances, how to make the case to management. Again, I took the original study, and with the help of BO, big data, we'll have a platform that allows us to compare the cost of living. I compared Australia's figures to those of a country like Ukraine. I found that over a year, by implementing collaboration in the company and conducting team-building activities that improve collaboration, a company can save $500 per employee per year through time savings, and the company can earn $800 per year per employee by improving the quality of work. In total, the effectiveness of team building per employee is $1,300. Accordingly, if your budget for team building and improving collaboration is less than this amount, but usually, companies aren't interested in less. Traditionally, in many HR projects, the ratio that's considered adequate is about 1 to 5, because HR is usually expected to deliver a high return on investment. Because all the benefits are not very measurable, they don't clearly translate into money. That's why businesses set aside a reserve. For example, in other areas where you can clearly count the money, like in sales. For instance, if sales increase by 30%, this clearly translates into money. The return on investment ratio there might be lower because there's a guaranteed result that can be easily calculated. In HR, it's usually 1 to 5. This is my observation. I've seen this in many studies. So, if you can gain $1,300 per year per employee, it's a reasonable investment worth making, but nothing comes for free. It will be 1 to 5, that is 3/5, which is about $260. By the way, for instance, in gamification, $100 per person per year was allocated for team building. There were also corporate events and other activities that cost quite a bit of money as well. Corporate event. The same goes for about $100 per employee and other figures. These were roughly the figures overall. Moving on. Now let's gradually move on to more specific, more specialized team building activities. And of course, I thought about where it usually starts. Team building usually starts with onboarding new employees. That is, when new employees join teams, some activities are needed that can improve teamwork. And often new employees start work and companies aren't always ready to spend money on new hires. That's why I've chosen very light team building activities today. They are essentially free for the company. So onboarding new employees, what's the main objective here? For employees to get to know each other, for old-timers to meet newcomers, newcomers to meet each other, and to better understand who's who. What kind of team building activities can we have here? 3 options. I'll say right off the bat that there could be many more. So basically, you can come up with something to understand what it could be. So the first option is called a day in the life. For each team building activity, we'll have this structure, this table, description, purpose, when to apply it, materials, how to conduct, mechanics, what to ask, hints and variations. I'll give you a brief overview, and you'll be able to use all these exercises in your teams. So the essence of a day in the life is for a person to tell others about a typical day in their life. If it's a new employee, and these are literally their first days in the company, they talk about a typical day at their previous company, in their previous job, presenting, as it were, what they do, what their responsibilities are. Even if this team is hypothetically made up of recruiters, recruiters understand what other recruiters do. This kind of story will still be interesting and allow people to get to know each other better. But it works especially well when you have a team of people from different positions. That's when it really shines. So for many, this is something new. For example, when we do team building in a team where a new recruiter has joined, all the other people are different. And so everyone talks about a day in their life. And it's important to understand that this is an event. For example, if one new employee joins the team every month, we won't do it every time because the older employees would have to repeat themselves. So it's more of a one-time thing. You can do it once every 6 months because things might change in 6 months. The second exercise is called billboard, they say. Here, a person sort of draws a billboard about themselves. Well, in this method, they also hang it on themselves, then they go off and socialize. But the method can be changed. The idea is for a person to draw something interesting about themselves on this poster, this billboard, this advertising sign, showing who they are, and here any imagination comes into play. And the third exercise is my name. When a person takes their name, uses it as an acronym and tells about themselves what their name means. For example, if my name is Mike, it's M-I, or briefly, more precisely, and for example, M-M is for Metallica. I really love the band Metallica. So the first letter of my name stands for Metallica. My favorite song is Master of Puppets. I have a t-shirt with their prints. I dream of learning to play the guitar. And songs? I even bought a special electric guitar to learn how to play the electric guitar, to play Master of Puppets, or some other song. The second letter in my name is the letter I. I stands for what's next. I can't think of it quickly now, but a person comes up with something. It could mean a child's name or some hobby. You can use a verb. It can be anything. Yogurt, in short, a person can come up with anything. They might say, I didn't come up with something for all the letters, but I thought of a word that includes this letter. And here's such a word. In short, there can be variations, there can be some improvisation, but the point is that it's fun. I mean, you present your name and people remember it. They remember that Mike is associated with Metallica and some other elements. Vlad is associated with these kinds of elements, so it sticks in the memory really well. These kinds of exercises can be used for meeting new people, as they're all simple and don't require any materials. Very interesting. Now for the homework. For those already taking the course with us, describe the goals and objectives of conducting team building in your company. If you're on this course, you came here with some kind of request, need, or goal. Let's formalize it. Let's spell out in detail what we want to achieve. And the second question I'd like you to think about is how conducting these team building exercises will help your company. That is, not only will employees work better, but what will the company gain from this? What company goals will be achieved? This is very important so that you can later convince management that such team building exercises are necessary. So this is a 2-part exercise. With this, we conclude the introductory topic and the topic about team building for employee onboarding. In the next session, we'll talk about the most common type of team building, when there's a team and you need to improve teamwork. We'll look at a very interesting model. I really like it. I won't say which one yet, but it includes 5 levels and a set of different activities. We'll see that they're completely different. So it's not just some fun team building activity. Next, in the third session, we'll talk about the specifics of team building between teams. After all, when there are different teams, it's a bit different. In the fourth session, we'll talk about what's relevant now, team building for remote employees. Although today's exercises can also be done virtually, meaning you can organize a call where everyone does all of this. But in the fourth session, we'll specifically break down the specifics of working with remote employees. What interesting things can be done there. In the fifth session, we'll talk about resolving conflicts and problems in the team. Through team building, this is when there's a real specific problem. And in the sixth session, about team building, what other processes should be in place? What else is needed besides team building? What to supplement team building with? This is what awaits us ahead. So I invite everyone to this course. I'll be happy to work with you personally, check your homework, and provide feedback. Well, that's how it is. That's all for now. For course participants, I'm looking forward to receiving homework from everyone else. Thank you for your attention. Join the course and see you next time. Bye-bye.